Welcome to today's devotional. We're in Exodus 27. We're going to be mentioning the first part in which they are to build an altar. Just like many pieces before, they were shown how on the mountain. And here we see this wooden altar with a horn at each four corners to be made of one piece with an overlay of bronze. All the utensils to be made of bronze. That there would be a bronze grating and a bronze ring at each four corner. And these rings would be so that poles of wood would be able to be inserted. Make the altar hollow out of boards. And so we won't go much into the symbolism of bronze because I think that's there's a lot of debate on that. Many suggest it means righteousness and judgment. Bronze can sometimes be a symbol of something less pure than gold, which I think would be a bit of a stretch for this situation. But with that, they are very intentional about the materials being used here. Some notes on the altar, though, specifically, is that the altar does become a focal point of Jewish religion at this moment. We see the altar as one of the greatest temple allusions to Jesus, the Lamb that will be slain. The altar continues this reality that God demands justice for sin, that forgiveness comes at a price. And more so we see, and we will continue to see, that this altar stands between God and his people. That God is in the Holy of Holies, that God is in the inner space, and this temple is those two sections meeting. The altar will be the entry point that man cannot get to, but where their sacrifices would be a sweet smell for their forgiving God. And so I think instead of just purely focusing on the symbolism and architecture, although interesting and beautiful and intricate, I don't know if we, in our daily lives, in our culture, like to acknowledge the need for an altar. Like to acknowledge that our sin comes at a cost. Likes to acknowledge that there might be a God greater than us whom we just cannot measure up to. I still remember when The Passion of the Christ came out, and it honestly really seemed to awaken a lot of people to the reality of the sacrifice and torture of Christ. And I can't even begin to perceive this sacred altar of wood and bronze and the millions of sacrifices, the blood and flesh removed because of our sin, our pride and selfishness and hate, our inability to submit to a good God. And so, Lord, I pray that we would continue to confess, that we would continue to submit and die. Lord, that our souls would be constantly reminded of the loss and sacrifice made, that we would be humbly indebted to your graciousness, to your forgiveness, to your ability to give life. Lord, that we would never forget the cost